Only one we're missing right now is Mr. Stoner. Doreen isn't going to be here because she's doing double shift with being a nurse.
Okay. Mr. Sikorsky is here?
He should be. I saw his name up. Daniel's, he's
Mr. Connor here, Mr. Dewhurst, Mr. Walker, okay. Mr. Scogno, Mr. Duff. Debbie's here, I can see. Dan, there's Dan right now. Okay, perfect. And John and Larry.
Yep.
I don't know if I tell Daniel to.
Sikorsky, because Doreen is not going to be present tonight, you will be voting as an alternate, okay? So
Understood. Thank you.
I don't see Ben yet.
I think I like it better in the courtroom. You don't download the virtual backdrop, but it's not showing up.
Yes.
Oh, the Old Bridge backdrop?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Once
It's in here somewhere, but I don't want to mess with it right now.
It's under video.
Ben. Yes. You have a hard time. Yeah. Yes. You know.
I request only zoning board members and the zoning board attorney to keep their video on. Everyone else, please turn off your video and mute yourselves.
Ben will be with you shortly. He was having trouble getting onto the computer. It's 7:30.
Is that the official time?
My Apple time, so I'm assuming that that's the correct time.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Old Bridge Township Zoning Board of Adjustment meeting from May 7th, 2020. I'm James Kelvin, and as the chairman of the board, I would ask you now to join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of our country. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States
of America,
To the republic,
which stands
one
nation,
nation,
under God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with
liberty,
liberty,
for all.
and justice for all.
Adequate notice of this meeting of the Old Bridge Township Zoning Board of Adjustment has been provided in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act at least 48 hours prior to the commencement of this meeting by prominently posting in the municipal complex an announcement giving the time, the date, the location, and the agenda of this meeting. Also by mailing such announcement to the Home News and Tribune. Finally, by filing a copy of such announcement with the municipal clerk. Ms. Silverman, could we have a roll call?
Mr. Dewhurst,
Here.
Mr. Connor,
Here.
Ms. Keldorf,
Here.
Mr. Scogno,
Here.
Mr. Walker,
Here.
Mr. Sikorsky,
Here.
Mr. Stoner. I guess he didn't make it yet. Chairman Sullivan,
Here.
Mr. Sachs,
Here.
Mrs. Shapiro,
Here.
Ms. Sawant,
Here,
Mr. Hart. Is,
Here.
I saw him.
Mr. Clerk is on, yes?
Mr. Garrity,
Here.
Mrs. Shapiro,
Here.
Ms. Sawant. Here. That threw me off. Mr. Hart? Mr. Garrity? Mr. Lavala?
Here.
Ms. Drum?
Here.
And myself, Kim Silverman, Vice Secretary.
Thank you, Kim. I'd briefly like to address the COVID-19 pandemic. This board takes particular notice of the widespread misery and death that has befallen residents of Old Bridge, the state of New Jersey, all the United States, and countries around the globe. We offer our sincere condolences to the victims and their families, as well as offer hope and peace to those suffering in hospitals or quarantined in their own homes, all while separated from their loved ones. And we pray that they will soon be able to rejoin their families and society and return to normalcy. We also offer our sincere thanks to all the frontline workers that risk their lives every day in pursuit of societal harmony and safety. I would ask everyone now, please observe a moment of silence. Thank you all. This meeting is being conducted electronically via the internet by a webinar. It is unique, and it will take patience for all of us as we are no longer gathered together, but doing so from our own homes. This meeting is also being televised by OBTV Channel 15, as well as YouTube. I remind those watching at home on their TVs that there is up to a 30-second sound delay in communication. This will be important to remember if you wish to personally join the public portion this evening. Anyone calling in must lower their TV or you'll be confused by the time delay. I would ask all participants now to silence their cell phones at this juncture to avoid any disturbances. I'm checking mine. The meeting will follow the same protocols as always, as the zoning board has done. There's some general housekeeping matters to start, which will be followed by 2 applications. In between the first and the second application, there will be a 5-minute recess for the benefit of the stenographer, the professionals, and the board members. As in all public applications, as in all applications before the board, there is a public portion that follows the testimony. If you are at home and you have a particular interest in either application and you wish to ask questions via telephone, I suggest that you take notes during the presentation to refresh your memory, as many of the board members do. Now would be a perfect time to access a pen and paper. As far as procedure, boards, I wanted to remind you, because the stenographer is not present and can't do 2 things at once, seeing us, I'm going to ask you to repeat your name when you're going to speak. And as I do while we're on the dais, I will start to my far left if you were sitting there and start with Mr. Scogno, and I will go by each member to see if you want to, if you have something to say or a question when it's the appropriate time for us to ask them. And I'll continue all the way over, ending with Mr. Sikowski, and then, of course, asking Mr. Sachs. Again, remember to say your name when you're speaking, so it's a matter of the record. The meeting tonight is being moderated by our planner, Lena Sawant, and I would like to thank her for all her efforts that she's done for the township and for the state in general to get these meetings off the ground, because as you know, for those at home, we're required by law, by DCA, to conduct these meetings, and we're trying our best to do it. The panel is comprised of all volunteers with the exception of Mr. Sachs, who is the board attorney. Everyone else is a volunteer and a non-professional in the sense of land use. So Ms. Sawant has been instrumental in giving us a trial run on this, a mock presentation, and we'd like to thank her as well. I'd invite her at this time if she has any further instructions before I pick up on the agenda. Ms. Sawant?
Good evening, everybody. A couple of announcements or rules to follow. Zoning board members will be unmuted during the first half of the session. So you will be on camera and you will be recorded, because the first half of the session is when you will have to take votes. So you will be unmuted. Once the presentation begins, then everybody will be muted except for the zoning board chairman, the zoning board attorney, myself, and the court reporter. The applicant's professionals will be asked to turn on their video and unmute themselves as they come to testify. A note to the public who is joining us via either phone or through their computers. Once the chairman opens public portion of the meeting, you will be asked to raise your hand using *9 if you're joining us by phone, or if you are on your computer, please click on to raise your hand button on your screen. Announce the last 4 digits of the caller's phone number as you call in. If you have logged in using your laptop, I will announce the last name of the caller. When I announce the name, I will also announce the next caller's name so that the next person can be prepared. Each one of you will be heard. Please be patient. I am closely monitoring the calls, so everybody will get a chance to speak. Please be mindful that there is a 30-second delay, so please be patient. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sawant. I will just as for those at home, the way that applications go is that the applicant's attorney will present testimony via expert witnesses. The board listens to that testimony. After each witness would speak, we would refer to the township professionals to see if they have any questions of that particular witness. After we had done that, I would ask Mr. Sachs if he has any particular questions for that witness. And then, of course, I'm going to go to all the board members, and then I would give them a chance. After all the witnesses testify in an application tonight, it does not mean that the application is complete. As a matter of fact, on the second application of the evening, I've been informed that only 2 witnesses will be testifying tonight. In any event, there will still be a mandatory public portion. It will not complete the second application. I don't know whether the first application will be complete either. But after the witnesses have spoken, we will go to the public, at which time where Ms. Sawant will handle those calls to get them live to the board so we can listen to your objection or your support of any particular issue. So I hope that's clear. And as I go through, I'll try and remind people. If you are going to call in, please try and stay on topic. And if the person ahead of you says something that you want to say, there's really no need to repeat it. The board will take notice of each and every name and call. I'm going to proceed at this point with our scheduled agenda for this evening. And we have one completeness waiver on here. It's 6-2020Z, found at Old Bridge LLC. I have a report in front of me, and board members, you have the same. By the way, that the representative on that action is Steve Gullen, Esquire. Ms. Sawant has authored the following concerning the application. She says the subject property referred to as the Fountains at Old Bridge LLC is currently comprised of a 2-story frame dwelling and various small structures along Old Mill Road and New Jersey Highway 34. The Board of Adjustment at its November 1st, 2018 hearing granted lot 9.11 a D1 use variance to permit townhouse style buildings. Also a D4 use variance to permit a floor area ratio of 2.4 and a D5 use variance to permit a density of 9.0 units per acre that would allow construction of a 2-story, of 2 3-story age-restricted townhomes buildings containing 29 units each, for a total of 58 units with ancillary site improvements. The applicant is now applying for a preliminary and final major site plan application with variances in order to develop the site with 2 3-story age-restricted townhouse style buildings consisting of 29 units each, for a total of 58 units. Part of this application includes a clubhouse, driveways, parking lots, landscaping, lighting, and stormwater management areas. the existing structure on this site would be removed. She authors further that our office has reviewed the waiver request by the applicant requesting one completeness waiver, which includes the following item: 3D, actual recharge assessment. The township's engineer has reviewed the waiver request when the applicant submitted the use variance in 2018. Based on the township engineer's letter dated May 1, 2018, the engineer at that time recommended granting of the waiver with the condition that an aquifer recharge assessment be required during the preliminary and final design phase of the project. I therefore recommend that the board does not grant the waiver and that the applicant submit an aquifer recharge assessment along with the preliminary and final major site plan application. The applicant should be advised that the waiving of any completeness item does not constitute approval of any portion of the application, and that any information found to be necessary during the review process must be supplied. Ms. Sawant, do you want to comment further, or should we go to Mr. Goen?
Actually, since the township engineer is also present, I would actually ask Ms. Shapiro to, chime in, because she and I had this discussion, and I wrote the memo only after having discussions with her. So I think we should have Ms. Shapiro chime in.
Ms. Shapiro?
Thank you, Chairman Sullivan, and thank you, Vina. I do want to say something. I just wanted to hear what the applicant's attorney is looking for or their reasoning for wanting the aquifer recharge assessment to be waived.
Okay, Mr. Goen, for the record.
Sure. Hi, everybody. Good to see everybody, even virtually. Thanks for hosting us tonight. Steve Goen from Giordano, Halloran, and Cecil on behalf of the applicant. So I can make this pretty quick. We are going to provide all those items on the waiver request, so including the aquifer recharge. So we don't need the waiver. There you go. So we would provide all of those, and then I expect we'd be deemed complete upon us providing all of those items.
Well, that makes it rather simple.
Yeah.
Ms. Shapiro.
Sounds good to me.
Mr. Sachs, as a matter of course, is this just null and void now, or is there do we need a vote?
There's no need. Actually, I guess as long as we have that on the record, there's no need for the waiver request.
Okay.
So
That's okay with
I
you,
guess
Mr. Goen?
staff can proceed forward, right?
Yes, good.
Thank you very much, Mr. Goen, for your appearance.
I would just like to add in that the planning staff will issue an incompleteness memo tomorrow so that it stops the clock for us and it gives Mr. Gowen time to submit the aquifer recharge.
Yeah, we'll submit everything within the next week or 2 weeks or so. So you'll see that.
Okay, thank you very
All
much.
right. Thanks, everyone. Take care. Stay healthy.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Moving on board, we have a deficient resolution. There is one in deficiency. It's 1619Z 220 Gordon Road LLC. However, the $3,000 deficient has been paid. Therefore, I'll move on to the resolution itself, 1619Z.
Wait.
What? I'm sorry.
We still have to take a vote on that.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Roll call, please, Kim, when you're ready.
Does someone want to move it?
I'll move it.
Second.
Moved in second by Ms. Kilduff.
Mr. Dewhurst,
Yes.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Ms. Killoff,
Yes.
Mr. Scogno,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Mr. Toskowski,
Yes.
Chairman Sullivan.
Yes. I'm sorry, I've been out of the building so long there, I forgot. Mr. Sachs, it's your turn. 16-19Z resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Application 16-19Z, applicant 220 Gordon Road, amended preliminary and final major subdivision with D4, D5C variances and design waiver approval. Property located block 3230, lots 2111, 2112, and 2114. Public hearing was held on February 6th of 2020. The applicant had previously been granted approvals back in 2014 and 2016. And at that time, bulk variance relief was granted for minimum lot area, rear yard setback, minimum non-critical area, number of stories. As well, there were several design waivers for cul-de-sac length, curbing type, shade tree location. This current application, the applicant was proposing to amend the approval to create fewer lots than were previously approved. The current application is for the creation of 13 lots, of which 12 lots would contain single-family homes, while 1 lot would contain utilities. The D variance relief that would be required is a floor area ratio, a maximum dwelling per gross area, which is a D5 variance. There were several C variances, minimum lot area, rear yard setback, minimum non-critical area, and also the same design waivers would apply, cul-de-sac length, curbing type, and shade tree collection. There was testimony from several witnesses, Walter Hopkin, who was the professional engineer, Nicholas Graviano, who was the planner. The applicant agreed to comply with all the recommendations set forth in Ms. Shapiro's report and Ms. Sawant's report. The application was approved on February 6th. And the only additional special condition is that the applicant agreed to provide a signed letter at closings with individual lot owners, acknowledging that those lots which are encumbered by environmental restraints and conservation easements and will be restricted from certain forms of development in the affected areas. As well, the applicant agreed to add similar language in individual lot deeds, which will be recorded with the Middlesex County Clerk. And that language shall be reviewed by the professional staff for acceptable form and content as a condition of approval. So you have the resolution in front of you this evening, which you can vote on.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sachs. Does someone on the board wish to move the resolution?
Motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Who seconded?
Roll call, please.
Connor.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Dewhurst,
Yes.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Ms. Kedloff,
Yes.
Mr. Scogno,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Chairman Sullivan.
Yes. Item 8 is discussion. On the annual report, board, we're going to move that into, I think, next month for the sake of saving some time this evening.
May 21st.
Thank you very much. May 21st for the annual report. The next item is amendment to the 2020 board rules and regulations. There comes a time for those watching at home that under special circumstances, the board operates normally under a set of rules and regulations that are taken by resolution every year and memorialized. There does come a time occasionally when there has to be a change in the rules, and if appropriate. In the past, we've changed the hours of perhaps when we've started a meeting and ended a meeting. We've made a resolution about an amendment for special meetings. And we find it now in this situation that we're in the world right now, that we find we need another meeting, another amendment. And I'm going to read that amendment as written, and it will be amended today if voted on by the board in favor. It says, in the event of a state of emergency, the Zoning Board of Adjustment may schedule a D variance application on a C variance night. Subsequently, in such unusual circumstances, the board may waive the special meeting fee required by the same section for homeowners. Mr. Sachs, have I pretty much explained everything to the board to your satisfaction?
Yes, and just to give the reasoning why this is necessary is, first of all, we do have a large number of applications that we have to process over the next few months. And as the board is aware, generally we don't schedule the D variance applications on the C night. However, in order to really maximize the time that is required, we're probably going to have to start doing that. And I know we'll start doing it, I believe, for the next meeting. And generally what we had done in the past is that if a D variance applicant wanted to be heard on that C night, they had to pay a special fee. All right, so certainly we don't want to have that burden upon them if we're going to be opening up those nights anyway. And same thing for the homeowners. So, that's the genesis for why this change is necessary.
Okay, absent any questions, board members, would someone like to move it?
I'll move it. Dewhurst.
Okay, we'll get Mr. Dewhurst and seconded by Mr. Scogmo, and I'm assuming that's for approval of the amendment.
For approval.
All right, for approval, please take the roll.
Mr. Dewhurst,
Yes.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Ms. Killer,
Yes.
Mr. Scogno,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Mr. Psychowski,
Yes.
Chairman Sullivan.
Yes. Thank you, board members. Item number 9 on the agenda this evening is continuances. We have a few of them to read into the record. The first one is 4-2020Z. That's 69 Ravine LLC. That's in the R5 zone located at 69 Ravine Avenue. It's a C&D variance. It's an addition to a single family house. Bill Bajour, Esquire, representing the applicant. They're asking that matter to be continued to June 4th, 2020. That will be with further notice.
Yes, with.
If anyone is watching in particular just for that this evening, it is not going to be heard. Will be on the schedule June 4th. The next one is 36-19Z. It's Jersey 34 Associates, located in the R20 zone at 693 New Jersey State Highway 34. That's to construct a second building of 22,353 square foot to include 3 basketball courts, a locker room, and bathrooms, expansion of parking. They're looking for preliminary and final major site plan with C&D variance. We're represented by the Hollywood Paper Firm, and they are asking that matter to be continued to also to June 4th, 2020. No further notice. If you're interested in that matter this evening, it will not be heard. It will be on the schedule for June 4th, 2020. The next one is 38-19Z. It's the Old Bridge Rifle and Pistol Club. That's the R120 zone on Jake Brown Road. This is to reorganize, reconstruct, and modernize existing outdoor shooting range. This too is a major site plan with preliminary and final with a D variance. They are represented by the Holden Paper Firm, asking that matter to be continued to June 4th as well, June 4th, 2020. If you're interested in that matter this evening, it is not going to be heard. Will be on the agenda for June 4th. Lastly, we have 39-19Z. That's Janet Budge. That is in the R6 zone. It's at 47 Woodshore West. That's for an add-on level on a home, requiring a D variance. The applicant there is asking to be continued to May 21, 2020, without further notice. What is the reason for the without? It was first time around, right? Yeah.
Yes, it's a house, it's a D variance, and it
Okay.
couldn't be heard beforehand.
Okay, very good. That will be the last of the continuances. Again, if you're interested in that matter, it's not going to be handled this evening either. That's going to May 21 of this month. There'll be no further notice on that.
And Mr. Chairman, I noted, I think just so we're clear, 69 Ravine Avenue LLC, Jersey 34 Associates, and Old Bridge Rifle and Pistol Club will be with further notice.
Yes.
With further notice.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
The only other, the last one will be without. All the others
That's fine.
with further notice. That brings us to our applications for the evening. I'm going to call the first one in. I think we need Vina to put Mr. Klausner and his professional on.
I'm ready. I'm ready, Jim. Peter is already on.
Okay, all right, then I'll call it in. It's the number 2-2020Z. This is the 2203 Route 9 LLC. It's in the CC zone located on Route 9 North. This is for a 1,300 square foot ice cream parlor. Major site plan, preliminary and final with C&D variance. Peter Klausner is representing the applicant. Mr. Klausner.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, public, members of your staff. Thank you very much for conducting this meeting. Very nice to see everyone. This is an application for preliminary and final site plan approval. Song Lee is my client. She's the principal of the company. This is her business. She's the property owner. This is a piece of property that's located on Route 9 as you're traveling north. Just past the ShopRite. It's a vacant gas station. There is the Tiger Mart from the Exxon gas station building that's left there. That's the building that we propose to renovate in order to construct the ice cream parlor. I think a number of years ago, Jonathan from our office took this application through some level of the approval of this property, through some level of the application process to develop, same as the Tim Hortons. And I think that I know it fell apart. And Miss Lee was the property owner at that point, looking for a tenant, is not interested in that anymore. She wants to operate her business in Old Bridge on that piece of property. She runs an ice cream shop now in New York. This is going to be a second location that will be opened here. She will be operating it. It is an ice cream parlor is what it is. Ice cream will be made on site, sold on site. Drinks will be sold, with the ice cream. And she proposes to rehabilitate the site, clean it up. Lena, our engineer, is going to take you through that. There's a significant amount of asphalt and decay out there that's going to be repaired as a part of this application. It's a business that'll be open for the majority of the year. I think like other ice cream parlors, there may be a month or two in the dead of winter where she closes. She's proposing to be open every day of the week. Starting hours are 12, concluding at 10. When I asked her about the type of hours she might have, she said maybe on Sunday. I know in New York I close early. Probably will end up doing that. There's 2 employees at the site, plus Miss Lee. And pretty typical community commercial type of development. However, as you can see from Vina's report, your ordinance, which is very specific, did not include ice cream parlors. Our planner will ultimately share with you that a number of other very similar uses, quick serve uses, fast food restaurants, things like that are permitted, but ice cream parlors are not. And in fact, the sale of dairy products is. And this application was originally filed in front of the planning board. And just before this pandemic started, we actually agreed with Vina of her reading of the ordinance and said we should be in front of the zoning board, and we brought it over in front of the zoning board. So that is why we're here tonight. It's the purpose of this application. I have 3 witnesses. They're all important and necessary. We have Lena Barone, who's the design engineer. She's worked with Miss Lee on this site and prepared the plans that are in front of you. I think she's going to do the bulk of the heavy lifting when it comes to testifying, saying there's a lot of existing conditions that are on the site that we have to deal with in order to develop the site. Lena's going to take you through that. We are on Route 9, so we have to deal with the DOT, and we have Randall Barringer here from Shropshire. He's our traffic expert. Talk to you a little bit about the NJDOT parking that's on site and the improvements along Route 9. And then Daniel Block from Mazer is our professional planner, and he'll provide you with planning testimony I hope you find convincing in order to grant the relief necessary for an approval. With that, Mr. Chair, I'd like to have Lena, I think this is how we'll do it. I'll ask if Lena could be sworn and share her credentials with the board. I'm asking for you to accept her as a professional engineer.
Go right ahead, Mr. Klausner. Mr. Sachs. Mr. Sachs is muted. There we go.
All right, thank you. Ms. Barone, please raise your right hand. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
All right, please state your name, spelling your last name, and professional affiliation for the record.
Yes, good evening. My name is Lena Balorda Barone. That is BALORDA-BARONE. I am a senior project manager and a senior associate at Mazer Consulting. I am a licensed professional engineer in the state of New Jersey, and my license is current. I have over 20 years of experience in land development. I have been licensed since 2003. I have a Bachelor's of Science from New Jersey Institute of Technology in Civil Engineering and a Master's of Engineering from Stevens Institute of Technology.
Ms.
I have
Barone, you testified before the Old Bridge zoning or planning board before?
I have actually not testified in front of the Old Bridge board. I was there for a a minor site plan application, but not
You
operate.
have testified before boards before in this state?
Yes, I have.
Well, we're glad to accept Mr. Rowan, Mr. Klausner, and I did want, because of the fact this is a virtual meeting, I'm going to ask any professionals that they do go a little bit into their credentials for those watching at home to understand the workings. So thank you.
Thank you. Lena, if you could take the board to the site. Do we have, you want to start with the aerial exhibit?
Sure. I would like to put up the aerial exhibit. Right now, my screen sharing is disabled by the host. I don't know if Miss Sawant or somebody from Oldbridge could put it up.
Do we have that plan, Ms. Sawant?
Yes.
Okay.
There we go.
That's great. Thank you,
Thank
Lena.
you. Would you-
By the way, let's mark this as, again, generally we could refer to a sheet, but let's just mark it as A1, Mr. Klauser, if that's okay,
Yes,
with today's date. Okay, that's fine.
and I'll make sure that I do that.
What you see
Okay.
in front of you is an exhibit titled Existing Conditions Aerial Exhibit, prepared by Mazer Consulting. It is an aerial photograph with the site, the subject property outlined in yellow. As was noted before, the site fronts on Route 9. It's located along the northbound lane. It is known as block 10,259, lot 9.12. The site consists of approximately 0.69 acres. It is located at the intersection with Arcade Lane. It is bound by Route 9, Arcade Lane, the ShopRite parking lot and plaza to the east and south. The only access to the site is off of Route 9 of the northbound lane. It is located in the CC Community Commercial Zone. And as you heard before, it is not a permitted use, and this is why we are here in front of you tonight. The site was utilized as a gas station, and it has been vacant since approximately 2012. There is an existing building on the site which has a footprint of approximately 1,375 square feet. The site also contains an existing parking lot and is in disrepair. Our applicant proposes to convert the existing building into an ice cream parlor to sell ice cream products and drinks. The intent is to operate the site all year and perhaps in the winter take 1 to 2 months off, depending on the weather. The proposed hours of operation would be 7 days a week from 12 p.m. to 10 p.m. It is anticipated that 1 to 2 employees are going to be on the site, depending on how busy the facility is, plus the owner, Ms. Lee. No indoor seating is proposed within the building. Only outdoor seating is proposed for this site. We are proposing to improve the site with 33 parking spaces, a refuse enclosure, new landscaping and lighting.
Lena, do we want to maybe move over to the rendered
Yes, we
exhibit
should.
2?
Thank you for reminding me. If you could move on to the next exhibit, please, which is the rendering.
As you're describing the site improvements, I think it'll be
Yeah.
easier for the board to reference that.
Mr. Klauser will mark that as A2 with today's date.
Yeah, I have copies and I'm actually marking them right here, Larry, so I'll make sure we keep track of them.
So what you can see in front of your screen now is an exhibit titled Proposed Conditions Exhibit. It is an aerial photograph showing the rendered site with the proposed improvements. So you can see the location of the existing building as well as the proposed parking spaces that I was just referring to. The landscaping is also shown in some colors and new trees and shrubs, as well as the refuse enclosure that's in the rear of the site on top of the page as you're looking at the exhibit. So access to Route 9 is to remain unchanged. It's a one way in and one way out as it currently exists. We are not proposing a loading zone, even though one is required, being that loading is going to occur in the mornings during off hours before the ice cream parlor opens, and therefore it will not affect the availability of parking for customers. We are expecting just like a single unit truck, a FedEx type truck, to be accessing the site. We are currently there is some pavement that is coming very close to the building that is in the rear of the site. Actually, the ShopRite parking is extending onto the subject property. We are proposing to remove that pavement and replace it with landscaping. Therefore, this development will actually result in a decrease in impervious cover of approximately 0.12 acres. The site is not considered a major development under the stormwater rules. Due to this decrease in impervious cover, there will be a decrease in peak runoff as far as stormwater management is concerned. Therefore, no stormwater basin is required. For the sanitary sewer, there is no nearby public sewer available for a connection. Therefore, we are proposing an on-site pretreatment system and a septic system. The existing water connection is proposed to be reused. One already exists to the building, so the intent is to just utilize that main. As far as the landscaping, we are proposing an extensive package of mostly native species. All of our proposed trees meet the township minimum size requirement. The shrubs are all zone tolerant. It's a mix of native and non-native species, which is typical for this kind of site. There was a comment in the letter about upsizing shrubs, and we could certainly do that for shrubs that have a vertical growth habit and which will achieve 36 inches in height. The number of plants in the buffers complies with the ordinance requirement. And there was also a request to provide some additional shrubbery along the easterly property line, which we will comply with. We are proposing new lighting for the site. It's in blade type fixture. It is an LED fixture that is dark sky compliant. 3000 Kelvin is what the color temperature is, and that's the clear white light. It's not a bluish light. It's just kind of a very clear color. As far as the lighting, we are proposing to light the sidewalk that goes to the trash receptacle, to the trash enclosure. And we believe that we're meeting the minimum requirement because we're considering this a sidewalk, not a pedestrian way. So we are providing a minimum of 0.9 foot candles. At the property line near Route 9, we are trying to meet the DOT standard, which is 0.2 foot candles at the edge of the traveled way, and we do meet that standard. The parking lot does have a good illumination. It meets the 1 foot candle standard, except for 2 isolated spots, which have 0.8, and that is basically a de minimis deviation, and we are seeking a waiver just for those 2 isolated spots. We had originally proposed to reuse the existing freestanding sign that is located on the bottom right-hand side of the page as you look on the rendering. However, the applicant has reconsidered and decided that she's going to propose a compliance sign. I have another exhibit, if you could just pull that up. So instead of reusing the existing supports, what the intent was, and the sign was exceeding the height, we would like to reconfigure the sign such that it meet the maximum height. And this is what the proposed sign would look like, and it meets the maximum sign area as well.
So
Mr. Klauser, I'm going to have,
We've removed the request for any of the variance relief associated with the pylon sign that was out there.
all right,
That's
so
correct.
we'll mark this exhibit as A3 with today's date.
And as far as the building signage, we don't have any details right now, but we will comply with the ordinance requirements. There is a number of variances and waivers associated with this application. A large number of them are due to the fact that this is an existing condition, an existing developed lot that is undersized. So there is really nothing we can do about that. I do want to point out, though, that many of the variances and waivers that we are requesting, many of them are an improvement over the existing conditions. One of the items that I wanted to point out that was not on our plan is the landscape area ratio. For example, that requirement is 0.4. The existing landscape area ratio is 0.18, and our proposed landscape area ratio is 0.34. So we are significantly improving this condition. I could go into the detail in many of them, but I believe that our planner, Mr. Block, is going to cover these variances and waivers. So we would, we agree with the letter and would ask for all of them.
So, Lena, what you're saying is that there's the list of variances and waivers in the letter, aside from the sign variances that were identified, are an accurate list of the requested relief that the applicant is asking for, and we do have Dan here who will address the support for those waivers and variances.
That's correct. And then I just finally want to address the status of approvals. We just recently received the Middlesex County approval on May 4th. We have received a response from New Jersey DOT regarding the letter of no interest, and we received their approval. They're agreeing that a DOT permit is not required. That was received on 4/24. We have filed with the county health department for the septic system, and a treatment works is also required due to the pre-treatment system. The treatment works application was already filed with the NJDP, and the response is currently pending. I have contacted the OBMUA about the water approval, and from speaking with Ms. Autry, I understand that if we just reuse the water main that exists, that there is a simple application process. It's not the typical 3-stage process, as no new water main is proposed. So we will contact the OBMUA after hopefully site plan approval is received.
Thank you, Lena. Are there any particular issues of the staff report with regard to the comments that you want to address that you have not addressed? Is there anything that you wanted to highlight or point out in those reports?
I think one item that I actually wanted to point out is the sidewalk along the lot frontage. There is an existing sidewalk within the Route 9 right-of-way. The engineer has requested that we replace that sidewalk. We would agree to do that. We will replace it. We would only replace the sidewalk, not the curb. And also, we could probably not do a new ramp at the intersection of Arcade Lane, just because that area is not within the right-of-way or fronting our property. That would already get into somebody else's property, so we would have to stop our improvements prior to that.
But the ADA ramps on our property that were asked for, they were asked for, correct? And we could install
Yes.
those.
We could do those. I also wanted to clarify that, I wanted to also clarify that as far as utilities, we will need a gas main, so the building will be serviced by gas. That was a question that you wanted answered. And I also wanted to confirm that the total height of the lighting is 18 feet.
There is an entryway between our property and the ShopRite property, and that will simply remain in its condition. That curb will be open between the
Correct.
properties.
Correct. We would not do anything to prohibit people from utilizing that.
And Randy will be able to testify, board members, Mr. Chair and board members, that although there's no agreement with the neighboring property owner, we're not relying on that entrance as part of the traffic study or the DOT letter of no interest that we received. But
That's
we'll
correct.
allow that condition to remain. It's probably best if there's as much free flow from one use to the other.
That's correct.
There is a conflict. You pointed it out earlier, but I just want to clarify. There's a conflict between the architectural plans and the site plan. The architectural plans, I think, might have showed some level of indoor seating, but that's not at all proposed. The only seating is the outdoor seating.
That's correct. And the configuration of the outdoor seating is per the Mazer plans as submitted.
Right. So the architectural plans would be revised.
Yes.
And on the architectural plans, there is an area that's reserved for the sign, which looks like it's probably too big under your ordinance in the ratio to the facade, but we will comply with that facade sign ratio. We don't need we're not asking for at this time a variance for the facade sign.
That's correct. We're not asking for a variance.
Allow me a moment. I just want to look and see. I'm sure Nicole and Lena will bring up the things that we didn't cover. I have no further questions for Lena, Mr. Chair. Make her available to you and your professionals to answer any of those questions.
Thank you, Mr. Klausner. Ms. Shapiro, you going to take this?
Yeah, I think I just want from Mr. Klausner clarification. I don't remember in the beginning, was there, did you, in your opening, did you say the hours of operation?
Yeah, 7 days a week, 12 to 10. And probably that's something that gets reduced on Sunday afternoons. Right now, she reduces her hours of operation on Sundays, but it all depends on kind of the demand.
And did I hear that you said that they close in the winter?
It's if there's no business in the Januaries and the Februaries where it's really closed, it's not uncommon for an ice cream parlor to close for 1 or 2 months. But if we have really nice weather and people are coming out and want to use the business, it'll be available.
Okay. All
The
right.
site will always be maintained, though.
Okay, I think my questions from Mrs. Barone were, I don't recall when we were talking about you had mentioned that we were going to reconstruct the sidewalk along Route 9 northbound, that you didn't want to go into Arcade Lane because it's not your frontage. So Arcade Lane is a township roadway. I believe that we would have jurisdiction though on that curb return for you to do that curb cut. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I would actually would sort of insist that you do that curb cut for that handicap ramp because that's an accessible route. So if you're fixing it along your driveway or along the property frontage, I would ask that you do that at Arcade Lane. Should it be in DOT's jurisdiction, I'm okay with not putting that hardship on the applicant.
Is it possible that Arcade Lane is a privately owned road?
No, I believe I looked. It's public. It's ours.
Okay, because the survey doesn't show it as public, but that's fine.
Yeah, no, I looked. I will double check again, but I remember looking at it to make that comment.
I think the acceptable condition is what you outlined, Nicole, is that if it is the township right away and you can provide us access to it, and it doesn't involve the DOT and it's not a private lane. Lena, is there any other reason aside from cost that we wouldn't want to do it? Is it's engineeringly feasible if the town can make the property accessible to us?
Yes, if we could do some grading and construction work there, sure.
Also, when I look at the limits or let's say the shading of the lines on your site plan, it looks like you're stopping your pavement for the parking lot at your property line, which, you know, you should extend it to the curb line at basically the curb line at Route 9 northbound. So that pavement is deteriorated just like the sidewalk. You should continue it. So if you are doing work in DOT's right away, I would expect to see then the highway occupancy permit applied for and submitted to our office as part of compliant resolution.
I will defer that to our traffic expert, but we would agree to get a highway occupancy permit as long as we're not triggering a like an access permit.
Okay. All right. And that's why I said don't touch the curb.
Well, that's what we want to avoid is the entanglement with the DOT. We do not in any way object to making improvements. In fact, you know, it's beneficial for us to make the improvements, but this type of a use, I'll let the experts tell us what the negatives are of the DOT permits, and maybe Randy can talk about that when he comes up a little bit.
Okay, I look forward to it because I just did, I shouldn't say we just did, maybe like 3 years ago, we had done the Inverness commuter parking lot and it was sort of the same application. I actually even, I'm pretty sure I left the curbing in place and then I had resurfaced the parking lot all the way up to the curbing that abuts onto the Route 9 northbound shoulder lane. And I did it and it was a highway occupancy permit and they didn't do me any favors. I still had to fill it out and stuff. And it wasn't actually a very lengthy process at all, which I was pretty surprised at. So, I mean, it's really the pavement in that area is deteriorated and it should be improved up into that curb line. So I don't know, Lena, did you have anything, anything that you did not discuss? Are you saying that the rest of my memo looks good and that you would take care of all the other items?
I'm saying the latter, yes, that we would agree to comply with all other items that I did not discuss.
Okay, and as for the dark spot, I don't have my markup with me on, you know, I usually circle the area of the dark spots within the lighting. Is there not an ability to add another lighting fixture? Or is there, I can't remember if it was along the frontage or was it along the roof of the property?
One of the dark spots is along the frontage. I'm trying to see if I can pull it up.
And then was there an ability to take into consideration any lighting on Route 9 to help your lighting calculations out? Perhaps there was an ability to take, and in addition to that, did you take into account any building mounting lighting that would, you know, help?
Well, I would just say as far as the lighting in the parking lot, that the minimum required average is 1 and we're providing 1.5. So we believe that it's well lit. The dark spots, the 0.8 that's occurring is near the property line. But again, we're trying to comply with the 0.2 foot candles at the pavement that the DOT requires.
Mm-hmm.
Another spot, there's another 0.9 that is very close to it's basically in the middle of a parking spot in front of the building. But really, when you go 5 feet over on either side, you're getting 1 foot candle or 1.5 on either side of it. So it's really just more of a de minimis condition, I would say.
Okay, one of the comments that I had mentioned was, would you be providing any like safety barriers for the pedestrians that would be sitting in front of the well, it was hard to tell because I remember the architectural plans showed a lot of seating in the front of the building. And then when I look at the site plan, it doesn't even show that big of an area in the front for the seating. So,
What we actually have is on the site plan, if you look at the rendering,
yep,
just south or just, I guess, west of the handicap spaces is the seating area with some shrubbery. We could certainly add some bollards there. And then there is some seating to the right of the building. The tables are shown in red.
okay. Well, I was
So
saying
that area is quite far back.
if that area is where the dark area is, can you add some lit bollards? I mean, my issue is if there's people that are going to be traversing through the parking lot to go to the ice cream, and the ice cream parlor is open till 10 p.m. I'm concerned about it being, in the summer months, it stays lit pretty late, but up until 10, like between about 8:30 and 10, it is now dark. I just want to make sure that I know you're meeting the minimum, but if it's a facility that's going to be open late and there's going to be a high volume of pedestrian traffic, I just want to ensure that the pedestrians are taken care of. So if you could do something that would increase the lighting by adding perhaps bollards for protection or something like that has the lighting on the top of the bollards, or the pedestrian bollards, I mean that can sort of increase without adding too much cost to the project.
Okay, we will take a look at that certainly.
Okay. Let me just go back to my memo. And so I think you covered everything. I mean, just remember that, should the board act favorably on the application, that the signing of the plans would only come after resolution compliance is completed, and that is when all your outside agency approvals have been obtained.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Groff. Ms. Sawant?
Good evening. So I think Ms. Shapiro has already covered majority of the questions I had. I just want to make sure that I hope that your planner is going to testify or comment on any waivers and variances requested, correct?
That's correct.
Yes.
Even the waivers, correct?
Yes.
Okay. With the outdoor dining, so the architectural plan had shown 20 seats. So I heard now you're saying that the site plan showed only 8 seats and you would go by the 8 seats. Is that correct?
Lena?
It's 3 seating areas. So it's going to be 2 tables to the right and then a table and benches near the handicap accessible spaces.
And that would be a total of?
Well, we actually, on the tables currently we're showing 6 per table.
Uh-huh.
So there's 2 tables times 6, so that would make it 12. And then, as many people, I guess, as could sit on the 2 benches, perhaps another 6.
The only reason I'm asking you to testify it is the township has an ordinance that limits outdoor dining to 8 seats if you want to get a permit, but if you want to exceed more than 8 seats, then it requires planning board or zoning board approval. I would recommend that you ask for as many seats as you want to put outside now, so that you have an approval for those outdoor seating, because later on, on Monday, the council voted to temporarily suspend the 8-seat limit on outdoor dining because probably once the state reopens after the pandemic is over, we might need to maintain social distancing and might not be allowed as much space indoor. But in your case, it's a use that is going to remain on the site for a long time. Summer months are the months when you will be utilizing outdoor dining spaces. So I would recommend that you come up, ask for what you need now so that you are covered under the variance.
Yeah, we would definitely want more than 8 seats. I would think at this point, we'll probably want to ask 25 to 30 or 20 at the max, anywhere between 20 and 30, because it would be a matter of configuration of the furniture.
Well, I thought the tables can only accommodate 6 each. And the benches, how big are the benches?
We don't have that detail worked out yet. You know, it's something that I think the applicant would just work with us to pick an appropriate furnishing.
I think that Vina had pointed out in her report, 20 outdoor seats and incorporated that into the parking calculation. And I think that Randy is prepared to address the parking under Vina's scenario of 20 outdoor seats. So I think that's probably the appropriate number that we planned on having Randy support. And I think Vina supports in her parking analysis. I think that's the right number.
All right. Well, we can circle back to that when it comes time to talk about conditions. So.
Sure. So I will actually that's all I had for Lena. I'll hold off my comments for the planner.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Sawant. I'm going to go to the board now in reference to this witness. I have one question. I read in when Exxon put the Tiger Mart in that there is a septic sewer there on property, and because of the fact Arcade Lane was privately owned, they would not give permission for the Exxon station to put sanitary sewer, to hook into their sanitary sewer. Ms. Shapiro, you're saying the township now has it. Why are they still maintaining a septic system there?
No, what you just said was true. I actually called OBMUA because I just couldn't believe that a property on Route 9 didn't have sanitary. And they went through the entire detail of the sanitary system in this area. And yes, that is true. It is a private system and they would have to have septic on this property for it to be developed. They, unless somebody down the line comes and constructs a sanitary line, that they are private. It is a private system. So
but you were saying that Arcade Lane may be township. Now, doesn't the sewer run into there, or is that strictly still private even though it's running on a municipal roadway?
no, I think it wasn't. I don't know exactly. I don't remember off the top of my head where the sanitary line is, but I think our Arcade is a public. I wouldn't have made the comment. I remember checking it that Arcade is a public road. But I have to check on where the sanitary line exactly crosses. Mm-hmm. But I know that when I had talked to Mike Roy on this piece of property, he was giving me the history about, what had happened on the Route 9 southbound side and what has happened on this side of the road to why they have to be on septic.
Okay.
Right now, I can't remember the entire conversation. Don't want to misspeak.
That's okay, but thank you for answering my question. I'm going to go to the other board members, and as I said, I'm going to start as we sit on the dais from left to right. So I'll ask you individually one at a time. Leon, do you have any questions for this witness? You're good. Well, you have a question? He needs to be unmuted, right?
Question.
You can
Yes,
unmute.
I have a question. Mr. Barone?
Go right ahead.
Hi, Ms. Barone.
Yes.
My question is I'm more concerned about the entrance and the exiting into ShopRite. As one that I live southbound, so I would travel northbound to get to the ice cream parlor. And then I would not want to exit Route 9 and head further north to come all the way back. I would clearly go back out ShopRite and make that jug handle there at, I think it's Fairview Lane or something like that. And are you anticipating that with people parking in ShopRite and walking into the establishment?
I mean, we're not necessarily anticipating
Well, I
that
could see
unless
that
somebody's
happening. Yeah.
shopping in ShopRite and then decides to, you know, perhaps come over. We're not doing anything to prohibit that per se.
So that you'll have permission?
No, we're just maintaining the same existing traffic pattern that's there right now, that there is no formal agreement with ShopRite. And I mean, it could.
I don't think that gas station had access or exiting into ShopRite, did they?
Yes.
There
Yeah.
there is an
It's always
open.
open.
It was always
Yeah.
open to ShopRite.
Yes.
And you're going to tear up the asphalt there and put sod down? On that-
It's only, if you look at the aerial exhibit, I don't know if somebody could pull that
Yeah.
up again.
I remember it,
Okay, on the top right-hand corner of the
Right.
exhibit,
right?
there is a curve.
Yes,
So there's actually two cars parked there.
yes. And what are you going to place there?
We're gonna put some landscaping and grass on there, being that that is on our property.
And no tables and chairs?
No, no tables and
No
chairs there.
tables and chairs.
No.
So
it's just landscaping.
you'll have cars going left and right and then straight out onto Route 9. And then cars coming in from Route 9. Is that correct?
Well, the cars accessing Route 9 would continue to utilize the entrance, or rather the exit that they're utilizing right now.
Yeah. I don't see how that's going to work out with DOT, but we'll see what they say. Okay, thank you.
The DOT has issued their letter of no interest for this application. Perhaps when we bring Randy up, the traffic engineer, he could expound upon that.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Klausner. That's what I thought I heard early on, that they had no interest.
They did. They issued that. We just got it a few days ago.
Okay. Anything else, Mr. Scott? No?
No, I thank you very much. No.
Ms. Kilduff?
No, I'm good.
Mr. Connor?
No comment.
Mr. Dewhurst?
No comment.
Mr. Walker?
Yeah, I do have a comment. My concern is looking at the new rendering, the landscaping that's borders Route 9 in the front. Will that anyway cause a sight triangle problem when you exit the ice cream parlor? Is that landscaping going to be real high and block the vision when I look to my left to leave that site?
It is not, and we will add the side triangle to demonstrate that it is not obstructing vision.
Okay.
Good, Mr. Walker?
Yes, I'm good.
Thank you. Mr. Stoner, you have anything? Anything from you, Mr. Stoner? No?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
No.
Okay. Mr. Sikowski?
No questions.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Sachs, you have anything?
Yeah, I just have a couple questions. I think really for Mr. Klausner, and maybe he can answer them. Peter, can you provide to the staff, I guess it was reference to a letter of approval from the DOT of April 24th, I think was the date. If you can please provide that to my attention and to our staff.
We will.
Okay. And my second question is, there must be some type of cross-access agreement between the two lots, i.e. this proposed, your client's lot and the ShopRite. Otherwise, you wouldn't have that, that pass-through. So do you have a copy of that?
I do not. I had asked the client if there was an easement. She told me there was not one in place, but I can look again and see if there's anything of record.
All right, so maybe you can run a title search, or at least speak, maybe talk to a title company and just see if you can find something. And my last question, going back now to access, is do you have an agreement with the property owner at ShopRite to use any of those spaces?
No.
Okay.
We're self-sufficient on our lot.
Okay. I mean, we know in reality you're probably going to have that at times, but all right, I just was curious. But why don't you see if there's a cross-access agreement between the two properties? And if there is, if you can provide that for us, or if none exists, then, please indicate so in writing.
I
Those
will.
are my only questions. Thank you.
I'm sure Miss Lee has got her title binder from when she purchased it, or I can just do an easement search for the title company.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Anything else, Mr. Sachs?
No, I'm good. I'm good, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Mr. Klausner, go right ahead with your next witness.
When I
Mr.
was
Chairman?
for Miss,
I'm sorry, Ms. Shapiro?
There is an ingress egress easement on the, that's shown on the survey that's on the ShopRite property. But I also just, now that Mr. Sachs had brought that up, I just wanted to know, especially when you're looking at like the color rendering or the aerial image that was up before, I believe was Exhibit A1. The back of the property, the back north, the back east, southeasterly corner of the property will be taking some pavement area away that the ShopRite is using as parking spaces now. So, I mean, instead of having that conversation later on or surprising them with that, perhaps, I mean, I don't know if they're under the assumption that that piece of property is theirs, but now, based on the deed, that property is now going to be part of the ice cream shop. And should there be a dialogue with the ShopRite to let them know that that pavement will be removed, because once that's removed, the striping configuration does not work in that back parking lot for the ShopRite. Is there a way, Vinay, that can you bring up that other image? Either the aerial.
Give me 1 second.
Okay. Oh, this is perfect. If you could zoom in a little bit, Vina, on that yellow square. So, once that the yellow area in the back there will now be vegetated, that pavement in that upper right-hand corner will be removed. And then the striping for the ShopRite won't work anymore in that back area, because now they'll basically have a property line. And I think the fencing was along that back line. Correct me if I'm wrong. So I think there has to be some sort of, I guess, statement to the ShopRite saying that this is going to occur.
Yeah.
Because this is their property and
Right.
you want to figure it out, But there is on the survey, there is an ingress egress, and you could see the triangular area that is on the right-hand corner. That actually matches what's in the survey. Now, I don't know why they call it ingress egress. I don't know, and I don't remember. I did this review so long ago, and I'm trying to remember what it did say in that document, but. Just to bring up that back portion, your questions, Mr. Sachs, just triggered that in my mind.
Thank you.
that's a title issue that we'll have to
Yep.
resolve with ShopRite.
Okay.
All right. One item. I know that I see a lot of trees on this property. Mr. Lavallo, you have no interest in this application, do you? Is Gary there?
Yes, I haven't seen the application.
Okay, but Mr. Klausner, there's no plans for removal of any trees, right?
Lena?
Well, there is plans to remove trees, but we are compliant with your ordinance. There is a heritage tree that we are going to be replacing. We did include a tree removal and replacement plan in our plan set.
Okay, Mr. Lavallo, you're going to want to take a look at this then, right?
Yes, I would think so.
Okay.
I just want to note that we are also exempt because 50% of the lot may be exempt per your ordinance. So all of that is on this sheet 6 of the site plan application.
Okay.
I went over something, and I don't know if Lena wants to address. There were a couple of waivers. Lena had brought up waivers before with regard to the parking lot and the landscaping in the parking lot. Lena, I wonder if you're in a position, Lena, to point out what those waivers are, and maybe just talk a little bit about the buffer around the property. We discussed the sort of the overall landscaping of the site as opposed to strictly complying with the ordinance design standards.
Sure. So we are required to have two buffers. One is a 75-foot buffer from Route 9. And then there's also a 50-foot residential buffer off of Arcade Lane. Both those buffers will be developed, and that's an existing condition that we are proposing to maintain. There are buffers required for landscaping, and we are asking for waivers. For example, a buffer is required between the parking spaces and the property line along Arcade Lane that we cannot comply with because we don't have 5 feet. Again, we're maintaining an existing condition, but we are adding a lot of shrubbery and planting additional trees along that buffer. It's just that the width doesn't comply. We are asking for a waiver from the requirement to provide a landscape island every 10 parking spaces. That also occurs right in this parking area where we have slightly more parking spaces, a longer row of them. Again, we are providing landscaping at the head of the parking and on the side, so we are requesting a waiver.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Klausner, with your next witness then.
Okay. Our next witness is Randall Barringer. So I see that his camera's been off. But Randall, I would ask that you be sworn in, place your credentials on the record. Randall's going to be our traffic expert to testify this evening, answer some of the questions that came up, and also discuss the parking analysis.
Mr. Barringer, please raise your right hand. I'll swear you in. Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right, please state your name, spelling your last name, professional affiliation for the record.
Good evening. My name is Randall Barringer. It's spelled Barranger. I have a degree from the University of Delaware in civil engineering. I have a little over 20 years traffic engineering experience. I am a licensed engineer in the state of New Jersey, and I've appeared before other zoning and planning boards, and I've also sat on 2 other planning and zoning boards as a traffic expert.
Thank you, Mr. Barringer. Mr. Klausner will accept his credentials and his expertise.
Thank you. Randy, can you take the board through the analysis that you conducted here? Talk a little bit about the parking, the DOT.
Sure. I'll start at the beginning where, we did traffic counts at Arcade Lane and US 9 in October to establish base volumes. We then grew those volumes a year based on the NJDOT growth chart to establish a no-build condition. And then we added in site traffic to those volumes to establish a build condition and evaluate each of those 3 conditions. The site traffic was estimated based on NJDOT HAP software, Highway Access Permit System. I might as well say those trips now. We estimate 98 total trips coming to and from the ice cream parlor. Based on the existing volumes and adding in the site traffic from our development, we anticipate no changes in level of service at the Arcade Lane and US 9 intersection. Basically because we're not adding a whole lot of traffic to that intersection because it's Route 9. And again, as we've gone over before, based on the number of trips estimated by the ice cream parlor, we do not trigger a highway access permit review by NJDOT. They have issued that letter of no interest based on the traffic volumes, and that holds as long as we, as was previously discussed, as long as we don't change those curb cuts on Route 9. Now, as far as the maintenance has been talked about before, as far as upgrading and repaving those, we can work with the site engineer to get that done. Typically, it is a highway occupancy permit, and you just provide the construction plan and a traffic control plan to NJDOT. We can do that to satisfy that requirement. So again, we anticipate no changes in level of service at the nearby intersection to the north of Arcade Lane. I'd like to go into the review letter now as far as the parking is concerned. Bear with me 1 second here. So I'm reading through the review letter under parking. We're in full agreement with that analysis of the parking supply based on the land development ordinance. Based on a 1,375 square foot building, 46 parking spaces would be required. And then combine that with the 20 seat outdoor seating area, that would require 7 additional stalls, for a total of 53 spaces. Now, what I have done is look at the Institute of Transportation Engineers Parking Generation Handbook to determine what the demand would be as opposed to supply. And based on other surveys of ice cream parlors, excuse me, I'm looking at fast food restaurants, since that's what the analyses in the review letter is looking at, parking requirements for fast food restaurant. Based on the ITE information for a fast food restaurant of this size, the average parking demand would be 14 vehicles. The 85th percentile, or more to the extreme level, would be 17, rounded up 17 vehicles on site. If we combine those 17 vehicles with an anticipated 7 vehicles for the outdoor, that's 24 parking spots in demand. So I believe the 33 parking spaces proposed would handle the demand, even though it does not satisfy the land development ordinance requirements. I think, with respect to DOT, as been previously stated, we did apply for a letter of no interest from DOT that was received, and they would have no further interest outside of, I guess, maintenance and improvement of those driveways. And again, as long as we don't change the curb cuts or the operation of those driveways, we should not trigger a review by the Access Department of DOT. I think that's about all I have to say. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Now, Randy, the analysis that you did, because the access to ShopRite had come up, your analysis to show that the driveway works and what you provided to the DOT was all reliant upon our own driveway in and out on the 2 driveways on Route 9. Is that correct?
That is correct. We have in our report, we assigned all site trips to and from the site to the driveways, not utilizing the cross access to the ShopRite. We've pushed all the traffic out our own driveways to analyze the levels of service that way. And again, those levels of service were anticipated level service C for a Friday afternoon peak and a level service D for the Saturday peak, which is comparable to what is at Arcade Lane. It's exactly the same, as a matter of fact. So it's comparable to what the driveways and roadways nearby operate at.
We didn't get an NJDOT letter of no interest relying on an easement that doesn't exist. It was nothing that we needed in order to secure that approval from the DOT.
Not to the best of my knowledge, no. I don't think they're looking at that. Again, we're being a little more conservative by only showing site trips at our driveway.
Thank you. I have no further questions, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Shapiro?
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to defer to Deanna Drum, our traffic consultant.
Okay, I'm sorry. Ms. Drum?
Good evening. Yeah, I actually did not do a review on this application. However, I would generally agree with Mr. Barringer regarding the letter of no interest, that it doesn't meet the criteria for a new permit. And a highway occupancy permit for the reconstruction of the driveways should be able to be issued in a relatively short time frame from DOT. If there's any specific question from the board regarding the testimony, I'm gladly answer that.
Thank you, Ms. Drum. Ms. Sawant, you have anything for the traffic engineer?
No, actually, I agree with the parking analysis. The one thing I would want to add, and I think I will add when the planner comes, or elaborate rather, since this is the CC zone and it's surrounded by fences, it would have been so much better if there was some pedestrian connection so that people from Stratford Apartments could walk to the store to have an ice cream. I understand there is a fence in between. If that would have been the case, the use would have been more attractive for even pedestrian traffic. So, but otherwise, I don't have any comments.
You know what? I think there is kind of a unofficial access. Ms. Kildufo, remember from the harbor, didn't you, or the arbors, couldn't you come in through the back there into the rear of ShopRite and walk through?
From the apartments?
Yeah, well, doesn't it lead right to the arbors, right where the end of the apartments is there?
Yes.
So I'm thinking that there's like kind of an unofficial walkway that they access coming to shop. So I would think they'd probably do the same thing. I guess we'll see. I'm going to go to the board members for the traffic engineer. I'll start with Leon on your end, Mr. Scogno.
I do have to go back to the entrance and exit of the ShopRite area. I seem to remember there was some type of fence, some type of poles with some type of chains going through it, stopping people from going from ShopRite into that gas station. And I still can't get over that you're going to allow traffic to come back into the shopping area and also enter into the parlor from that area. Are we certain that that's been approved?
Mr. Scogno, there's a picture on page 4 of the.
Yeah.
Did you see that one?
Yeah, I do see that.
But I don't see the fence that you're referring to.
Yeah. And also, can you anticipate maybe on a nice hot summer day, there might be a little bit of a line getting into the establishment from Route 9, causing a slight backup?
You know, based on my previous testimony for parking demand, I don't foresee that. I of course can't guarantee it will not happen if it's a popular ice cream parlor, but based on the information I have available, the 33 parking spots can accommodate a peak 85th percentile parking demand there. So I don't anticipate any backup onto Route 9.
Yeah, as one enters into the establishment from Route 9, you'll have automobiles exiting through ShopRite, and that'll cause a stop.
So a conflict in the parking lot you're talking about.
Yes.
You know, that's certainly a possibility. It's not something I looked at. I was not considering any cross access from ShopRite. You know, I guess the current conditions, I think there is a chain up across that area.
Yes, there is. And also, if one wanted to get back into that shopping area, you would have to cross back out of the establishment and into ShopRite, and that might cause a problem, cars coming in from Route 9. Okay, so
again, it's a low speed parking lot maneuver. I don't know that it'll be too big a concern, but you certainly, if there is a cross access, it could happen. Again, I think there's sufficient room in the parking lot to keep cars apart in that scenario. But certainly that could be a concern. Again, I did not look at that. It is currently chained off, and I was not putting any site traffic through that access.
Yes. Thank you.
It looks to me, Leon, on that figure 4 in the reports that obviously there's foundation or bumper stops, and it looks like at one time there was probably chain link fence along there from preventing cross access.
Yes, I agree.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Ms. Kilduff, anything from you?
I'm good.
Okay. Mr. Connor.
No questions.
Mr. Dewhurst.
No questions.
Mr. Walker.
No questions.
Mr. Stoner.
No questions.
And Mr. Psychowski.
No questions.
Mr. Sachs, anything?
No, I have no questions, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Mr. Klauser.
Mr. Chair, I just, if the board is concerned about that access, subject to me just double checking with my client, and I can't lean over my shoulder and ask her. I asked the engineer if there's any issue with blocking it off. I was able to text her. And she said she has no issue from an engineering standpoint to block it off. So at some point, I'll take a second and see if I can get Miss Lee. And then if that's something we want to see blocked off to prohibit that, because that's what I wanted to clear with Randy, was that we weren't reliant on that for his analysis that the site can function. But if the board is concerned about that, and our engineer tells us that there's not an issue, and I can just make sure that my client didn't want it for some reason, that's fine. I know that, and just in my experience with dealing with a lot of these along these major roads, Route 9 through 33s in Monmouth County, it's often encouraged to have interior flow. I think even the county in Middlesex along Route 516, every time I go in front of them, say, go have an opening with your neighbor, have an opening with your neighbor. We would rather there be more free flow. So to me, and what do I know, it just seemed to make more sense to go ahead and leave that open because of the experiences I've had along Route 516 and all the properties we've dealt with. What if it's something
Peter,
the board would rather see
I would
shut
agree with
down?
your statement. It is always preferable to, in this case, to keep vehicles off of Route 9. You don't want them to leave, ShopRite parking lot, get on Route 9 to pull into the ice cream parlor. So it would be beneficial, if possible, to incorporate that, for sure.
And Randy, we have drive aisle width so that if there is a conflict coming in Route 9, I mean, there is width for cars to operate at the same time. And like you had said, these are low speed connections or low speed interactions.
Yes, I believe the parking lot is laid out according to industry standards. I think there is sufficient room for two-way traffic. I don't think there will be conflict. It's certainly possible, but I don't believe conflicts will happen.
So, I could leave it as ultimately a recommendation from your professionals and the board. And it's probably, again, I just want to double check with my client. It's probably something we can accommodate either way. I think that this team in preparing the plans felt that, consistent with other recommendations we've got from counties and states, that it was better to have as much opening and free flow as possible.
Mr. Sachs, you have an opinion on what should happen there?
Well, my opinion was raised a little bit earlier with the cross-access easement or a cross-access agreement that probably does exist. Otherwise, I don't think we'd have that opening. So I'm not sure it's really going to be that easy to just shut down an entrance that may be legally governed by the fact that ShopRite may still have the right to access this ice cream parlor property as well. So that's why I raised it before even. So Peter, I think it's important that if there is some type of an agreement recorded, that we take a look at it, because you may not be able to shut that entrance down. It may have to stay open. So
yeah, we'll certainly look into it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Klausner, you have another witness.
I do. Thank you, Randy. Dan Blocken is with us. He's a professional planner with Mazer. And Dan, I'd ask if you would share be sworn and share with the board your credentials and your experience.
Mr. Block, if you can raise your right hand, I'll swear you in. Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Okay, please state your name, spelling your last name and professional affiliation for the record.
Good evening, Daniel Block, B-L-O-C-H, with Mazer Consulting. I am a licensed professional planner in the state of New Jersey, certified by the American Institute of Certified Planners, and I've testified before, numerous boards before. Never Old Bridge, so this is my first one in Old Bridge.
Well, there's always a first for everything, Mr. Block. We'll accept your credentials.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dan, if you could you take the board through a little bit of the analysis that you did in preparing for this hearing, and then through your proofs as to the variances and waivers that are requested?
Sure. I did look at the application that was filed, all the documents, the plans that were submitted, looked at the town's zoning ordinance, master plan, and looked at the site. So I did do an analysis of looking through what the permitted uses are. Again, this is in the CC community commercial zone. And as the board is well aware, that the ordinance has an extensive list of permitted uses, a chart that is governed by the SIC code. So every single use that is imaginable is listed, and then there's a check whether it's permitted in each zone or not. In preparing such a list, it can be very onerous to make sure that you check every box that you meant to. It seems that maybe this one was one that fell through the cracks. It was originally conceived that this would be SIC code 545, which is a dairy product retail store. But actually, when you look at the definition in the SIC code, that is a retail store engaged in selling food for home preparation. So it was determined that was not the appropriate use. So, and that use is permitted in the CN, CC, and CR zones. And what was determined was this is actually the SIC 5812, which is short order eating place with specialty product specialties such as ice cream. So this was the ice cream parlor. That's only permitted in the CM district. So it was determined that this is not a permitted use in the CC district, and this is a use variance that is required. So we are seeking a D1 use variance here for a use that's not permitted in the zone, and I will go through the positive and negative criteria for that. And then we also are requesting a number of bulk variances, C variances. Many of these are existing conditions because we are adaptively reusing this site, retaining the existing building and repurposing it from a gas station to an ice cream parlor. So many of these conditions are existing. We have, in the site design, tried to minimize or mitigate as many as we could. And some of them are being reduced as much as possible, but they still exist. So I will go through those as well. The first one is for number of loading spaces. For a fast food restaurant, we need one, and we're required to have one loading space. 0 are proposed because of the small site. There's really no room to provide a separate loading area. So the applicant is proposing that loading will take place in the parking lot, but outside of normal business hours. So there'll be no conflict with any vehicles or patrons. The next one is the number of parking spaces that's already been discussed. We are required 53 spaces based on the use and proposing 33. There are 28 spaces that exist for the gas station. So we're increasing the number of spaces, but not enough to comply with the ordinance. The next one is for maximum impervious coverage. We're actually reducing, that was testified before, we're reducing the impervious coverage on the site. Existing is 77.9, and we're proposing 59.6. So we are eliminating that as an existing variance that we don't no longer need. The next one is for landscape area ratio. The requirement is that there's a landscape area ratio of 0.4. The existing site has 0.18. That's non-conforming. We are increasing that, so we're making it better, but not quite all the way there. So we're 0.34. So that is another C variance we're looking for. And another existing condition is the major arterial frontage buffer. We're required a 75-foot buffer from Route 9. Existing is 5.3 feet, and we're proposing 10 feet. So again, improving that, but it's still not compliant. The next one would be the parking, no parking in the buffers. This is an existing condition. The parking exists in the buffers, the required buffers, so we are seeking that as a variance. And then the residential buffer in the rear, 50 foot is required, 1.9 feet exists, and 3.4 is what we're proposing. So we're increasing it almost double, but still not quite enough. We could not comply with that 50-foot buffer requirement. And then there are some existing conditions that are not being changed. Minimum lot area is required 3 acres. This is a 0.68 acre site. No change there. The minimum lot width required is 200 feet, where existing is 150. Minimum front yard setback required is 75 feet. Existing building is 73.76 feet, so it's close, but not quite there. And then minimum side yard setback required is 25 feet, and this is existing 24.7, so just a few inches off there. So I'll go through the positive and negative criteria, starting with the D1 variance for the use. The positive criteria, we have to show that the site is particularly suitable for the use requested. In this case, the site is suitable. This zone is permits a number of uses that are actually more intensive than what we're proposing. This is a good use for reusing this gas station property. It actually will decrease the intensity of the property, in terms of number of vehicles, trips that will be coming in and out compared to the prior gas station. So we do believe this is a suitable location for this particular use. We're also promoting Purpose I of the municipal land use law, which is to promote a desirable visual environment through creative development techniques. This will be more visually attractive, especially considering what's there today. The site is a bit of a blight on the town, so we will bring it back up into good configuration, and will be an attractive use for the town. We're promoting Purpose J, which is to prevent urban sprawl and degradation of the environment. Again, reusing, redeveloping an existing site. It's been recently cleaned up from site contamination, and proposing a use that is more consistent with a clean environment. And then Purpose M of the municipal land use law, which is to provide a more efficient use of the land. Again, redeveloping and reusing the site as an ice cream parlor would promote that purpose. Moving on to the negative criteria. First, that we have to show that there's no substantial detriment to the public good. The property is, again, being adaptively reused from a gas station, moving towards away from a 24-hour operating gas station to this limited operating ice cream parlor. Again, it'll be less intensive. We're improving the buffers as much as possible, and this will be more in line with the existing retail at the Shrubbery next door. So I don't see any substantial detriments here to the public good. The next thing we're looking at is impairment to the intent and purpose of the master plan and the zoning ordinance. Again, I think this is consistent with the purpose of the CC zone, providing for a variety of retail businesses and personal service establishments. I believe that the ice cream shop really is right in line with the intent of that zone. Again, this was just something that may have been overlooked as the ordinance was being adopted. And again, this is consistent with many of the goals and objectives of the master plan, which look for, economic development, providing rateable uses and employment in the area. So this would be a use that is consistent with those goals and objectives. In terms of the C variances, although they're slightly different, the positive criteria is really the same for all those same reasons. The same purposes of the municipal land use law that I just stated are advanced through this application. There's no substantial detriments for any of those variances that I went through, and the benefits of allowing for each of those variances will substantially outweigh any detriments. So in my opinion, the board could grant this application for the D variance for the proposed ice cream use along with those C variances, which are attempting to improve existing conditions as much as possible. So that's basically the conclusion of my testimony, and I'd be happy to answer any questions from the board.
Dan, in short, this is the type of zone, this is the type of use that belongs in the community commercial zone. Isn't that correct?
Yes, I agree. That is the type of use that should go there.
And this is a smallish type of property that's located along a major highway. And do you feel that under those conditions that this type of use, it works on the site in its lack of intensity?
Yes, I agree. I mean, when you look through the wide variety of permitted uses in the CC zone, many of them would not work here. The site is just too small. So you really need a smaller individual retail or personal service use here, which is what we're proposing.
And that's precisely that. This particular type of use with the size of building that it needs this property is particularly suited for that use.
Yes, absolutely.
In looking at what the applicant has done to develop the site and utilize the existing conditions, do you see any variances that are just not necessary or that are created by the applicant that are unnecessary because of overuse of the lot? Or do you feel that this is an efficient use of the piece of property?
I believe this is an efficient use of the property. I think the applicant is making every effort to comply as much as possible or increase buffers and things like that as much as possible. But just from the constraints of the existing property, the layout of the building and the parking lot, it's just not possible in certain cases to comply.
Thank you, Dan. I have no further questions of Dan. He's available, Mr. Chairman, for questions. You're muted.
Thank you, Mr. Klausner. Thank you, Mr. Block. Ms. Sawant?
Sure. I agree with Mr. Block's testimony, and I have said this numerous times, and I've testified numerous times to the board that our land development ordinance was based on the North American industrial standards. It's hyper specific. In the last 2 years, we aggressively gone and revised certain sections of the ordinance. We started with the economic development opportunity zone. We changed the permitted uses in those zones. Then we moved on to the CN zone, and a CC zone is going to be the next one I go and evaluate. So I was a little embarrassed when I saw that an ice cream parlor is not permitted in a CC zone. It was surprising. I was too hoping that this would be covered under the dairy section of it, of the standards. But then I saw that there is a special category which specifies ice cream parlors, short order restaurants. And that's when I reached out to Peter, let him know that it needs a use variance. But I agree with the testimony. I have no questions except for few. One, Mr. Block, I would just want to reiterate the variances and the waivers you're asking for, only so that we have record. And Mr. Sachs and I have talked about this. Like, we really want to include the variances and waivers that are granted by the board in our resolutions moving forward, because it becomes very challenging for Ms. Shapiro or me to review compliance plans, especially when they are filed 2 years after a plan has been approved. So can you please reiterate the variances that you're seeking for? There is one particular waiver, and if you look at my memo, it's bullet 4, parking, and it's B. That's pursuant to section 250-77A to A. Any parking facility should be at least 5 feet from the side yard. Is there a way that you can eliminate that waiver? Because the shortfall is only for like 1.8 feet. I mean, that's one waiver that you could easily eliminate.
My understanding is that that's an existing condition that's 4 feet is existing where 5 feet is required. I don't know. I'd have to defer to Lena on whether the site can be redesigned to accommodate that.
So I think, which means that it is an existing condition, not exasperating that existing condition, correct? That's
No,
all I-
that's one that's maintained, Lena.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. So can we just quickly go over the variances and the waivers you're asking for?
Sure.
I'm sorry, is there a way to shortcut that? If they're going to be included in the resolution, can we stipulate that the zoning chart that you've provided, which identifies the waivers, is accurate and can be transposed into the resolution?
Sure, Peter, I never have issues with the variances because they are very clear when we vote on them, but it is the waivers that kind of disappear, or they are the ones that are questionable at times. So in fact, I'm fine if I know that you are eliminating any sign related variances.
That's
so
correct.
Other than that, everything on the variance table is accurate. We could just go by that. The only thing is minimum front yard setback. Mr. Block, did you say it's 73.8 or was it something else?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Minimum front yard setback. 70.
Yes.
And what is the number you have?
We had used
You have required at 75 and it's proposed
required.
at 0.8.
Right. Well, I have existing and proposed is 73.76.
I think I rounded up to 70.
Someone rounded up.
Yeah, I rounded it up. Okay, perfect. Can we go over the waivers?
Actually, Vina, before we leave the variances, so we're going to eliminate the 2 variances for sign size and sign height?
That's great.
Yeah.
Okay, fine.
Yes.
Okay, yep, thank you.
I think the waivers
Yep.
start on page 8 of my memo. So you need a waiver from 250-77A to A. You need a waiver
Yes.
from 250-77A to F.
Yes,
You need a
we are
waiver.
seeking a waiver for that.
Yes, you need a waiver from 250-77A1C.
Correct.
Uh,
Yeah, that is the backup area near the recycling enclosure.
That's correct.
We're proposing 5 feet.
Right, and then page 10, landscaping. So I heard Lena say that 10B, comment 10B, number 2, you would comply with it, so that gets eliminated?
No, we still need the waiver because that's the existing condition.
Okay, so then you need a waiver from
Correct.
50-74C to H.
That's correct.
2.
Yes.
Then going back to the engineering memo, I just want to, page 12. It's
Yes.
250-77A1A.
Correct.
The size of the parking spaces, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. 250-77A1C. Backup
We need a
area.
waiver.
Yes.
Yes.
250-77A1G.
We're also seeking a waiver.
Right. LDO chapter 250-77B.
Seeking a waiver.
That's the loading space.
Yes. I think that is all. Mr. Block, Lena, please chime in if I missed anything.
I think there were some lighting.
Lighting and landscaping.
waivers.
Yes, I'm
Lighting and
again in the,
landscaping.
right, but
Yes,
I thought we covered 74C2H.
That's the existing condition of the 4 foot that we can't make 5 feet, correct?
Right, so we already covered that.
Well, we do have the Appendix K with, on page 14.
Yes, I'm there.
Okay, item 1 says pedestrian ways adjacent to the existing building leading out to the trash enclosure area, which requires a minimum illumination of 2.0 foot candle. It was our interpretation that that should comply with the sidewalk requirement, which is a 0.9 foot candle, which we comply with, because in our interpretation, a pedestrian way is something more of a, you know, like a major pedestrian way, not a sidewalk leading to the trash enclosure.
Okay.
I'm okay with that.
The sidewalk at Route 9 frontage, we were not lighting it as that's in the DOT right away, and they require less lighting. And for the parking lot illumination, we are requesting a waiver because we have those de minimis exceptions. We will try to add more light, but we would like to request the waiver just in case, because you know, I can't speak to it now without performing any calculations, that I will get it to comply.
So Lena,
I'm
you're
okay
not
with that.
asking, so Lena, you're not asking for a waiver on pedestrian ways adjacent to the existing building and sidewalk at Route 9, correct?
Correct. We're only asking for a waiver for the parking lot, which is item 3.
On page 14, right?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay,
I think that includes all the waivers.
okay, gotcha.
Yes.
And the only other thing I would want to add is, Larry, I agree with your comment about the shared access, because I think segregation of land uses was a product of the planning of the 70s. And the way to mitigate or address it to some extent is by creating these shared access easements so that there can be flow or circulation between adjacent properties. So I believe there should be something, and I think that should be one of the conditions of approval if should the board look favorably on this application.
Yep.
That's it for now.
Is the condition that I have to secure something from ShopRite, or that I just locate whether there is something from ShopRite? Because securing something from ShopRite could be quite difficult.
So let's see if there's something recorded, first
Okay.
of all right? If there's something recorded, then obviously we need to review it. And let me circle back maybe to Deanna on that, just our traffic engineer, about any issues with that cross-access between these two properties.
Yeah, as I said before, I didn't review the this application. However, you know, looking at the exhibits and hearing the testimony, typically you do want type of cross access nowadays. I mean, it does limit, you know, people having to either go around the block or back out to Route 9 and vice versa. You know, there are going to be some people that are going to go get ice cream and then go shopping, or go shopping and go get ice cream. It's just the nature of the business nowadays. And I think having the cross access, I think is a benefit for both properties. I think it's going to be limited in regards to the number of people back and forth. But again, even DOT encourages that nowadays. So, you know, for me, from a planning aspect, my professional opinion is that I think having a cross access is a good thing.
Okay, so maybe Mr. Klausner, what you can do is you'll investigate and to see if there is such a recorded agreement between the two properties. I have a feeling there probably might be, otherwise I don't think there would have been the construction of that joint access between the two lots. So you may have to dig a little bit with the title search on that. I don't think you can close it off. I know you mentioned that you were thinking that maybe your client would just close it off. If there is a recorded agreement, you can't close it off.
No, you can't close it off.
Obviously,
I would agree.
it would, that agreement would go in perpetuity. But, you know, if our professionals are comfortable with the configuration of this, I know your engineer did mention that, you know, this is obviously not a high-speed area. I mean, this is a parking lot, so you will have, you know, vehicles not traveling at excessive speeds. You know, it's probably a safe condition, but why don't you, maybe if the board does act favorably as a condition of approval, we just need to confirm the existence of this cross-access, and then I need to review that cross-access along with our professional staff to see if there's maybe some conditions in there that we're not aware of, you know, that could potentially impact the project, but hopefully not.
I will do that.
Okay.
Mr. Plaza, do you have any other witnesses?
I do not have any other witnesses. I imagine we will open up to the public. After that, I would like an opportunity to just address the board again.
Did I let my board examine Mr. Block? Is anybody on the, did I miss anybody? Mr. Scogno?
Not at this time.
We have a sign up right now, so I can't see. I'll tell you what, Mr. Klausner, in the sake of saving some time here, let me go to the public portion now. And if there's any further questions from the board, I'll come back to them, okay?
Okay.
That's okay with you, Mr. Klausner?
Yes, sir.
Okay. As I mentioned before, and I'll remind those at home, you'd have to call in to do this. There has been signage that has been put up for you to do so. I don't know right now if Ms. Sawant is moderating, and I don't know if she has anybody on there as of yet. This would be if you're interested in speaking on this matter for the location is 2203, I believe. Let me just make sure I'm right on that. I'm sorry.
2203, yep.
203 Route 9 northbound. It's next to the ShopRite. It's an abandoned Exxon, old Exxon station. Please call in now. Bear in mind that this is 30-second time delay. We'll, in the meantime, just stand by and we'll see if Ms. Sawant gets any calls. If you're calling in from home, the board attorney must swear you in before you testify before the board.
Residents wanting to talk and who are right now in the Zoom call, please press *9 to raise your hand. If you're using a laptop, please click on the raise your hand button, which is at the bottom of the screen.
You know, we have somebody.
Yes, I have one caller, Nina Jacknowitz. Please come forward. You are unmuted.
Thank you. Good evening.
Yes.
And thank you, zoning board, for allowing the public to join this meeting. It was a very interesting presentation of the ice cream shop. There were a number of questions I had. I was actually calling about the next item on the agenda, but the first thing is that
Ms.
loitering
Jacknowitz,
is a concern.
Ms. Jacknowitz, if I can interrupt you, it's Larry Sachs. I'm the board attorney. Let me swear you in if you don't mind. So do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, sir.
Okay, can you just state
So
your
help me
address for the
God.
record? Okay, can you state your address for the record?
203 West Greystone Road, West
Thank you.
Old Bridge, New Jersey.
Thank you very much. Okay, go ahead, proceed.
20-year resident. Thank you, sir. First, I wanted to say thank you. It was a good presentation, folks. And I think you guys had some lovely questions. Some of you were a little quiet, which I always surprise you guys are. But that said, there were a few things I was concerned about. First of all, I was a little concerned about loitering because, and when I use the word loitering, I you know, right now we have obviously COVID craziness going on. and kids have nowhere to go that they can hang out in. And I know the shop is going to close at 10 o'clock, but what are they going to do to protect both the community? And I'm not talking about the community from causing damage. I mean, that's obviously a horrible thing, but also the kids from hanging out there drinking, and perhaps hurting themselves. Well, running away from their parents, so to speak, if you know what I mean. Because kids do that. I'm just asking what the ice cream shop is going to do to address that. I mean, I had a very short window that I saw the layout of the parking lot. Is there an entrance and an exit? Or is it just one entrance exit drive?
Are you familiar with the area, Ms. Jackowitz?
Yes, I know the area very well, sir.
Okay, so yeah, there is an entrance, there is an exit. And I would assume anyone who was doing something wrong, if they were on the property, that they would summon the police. But I don't know these places normally. If you think about Rita's on 516, or you think about the Carvel on Route 9, they don't normally become hangouts. I think people come, they buy, they eat, and they leave. But
I'm during the hours of
any other situation, if something wrong happens, there would be the police should be summoned.
Of course, I'm not talking about during the hours of operation. During the hours of operation, I think that I agree there's not going to be, I'm going to use the word mayhem. I'm talking about off hours of operation. How are they going to prepare for that? Because there is an absence of things for kids to do. And unlike Rita's, which is actually very, very accessible by the police and the community, even though the road is not driven on by as many cars, it's slower, so that people would see things that were going on there and perhaps call in. But Rita's is not as amenable to a place that is covered by trees and has tables to hang out in and offset from a highway and next to an apartment complex.
Well, I would say that if it isn't a hangout right now and it's abandoned, I would doubt that it would become one. But I'll let the applicant weigh in on it if his attorney or someone wants to.
Mr. Chair, thank you. I think you've answered the question for me. I know what we can do affirmatively, if it's not on the property already, is make sure that a Title 39 letter has been filed with the police chief in Old Bridge to make sure that they have no issue with access to our property in the event that they should need to, come onto the property to enforce the laws and the penal code.
Ms. Jackowitz, does that satisfy your question?
Yes, that does. I was only asking because I know kids. I mean, we all have had kids. Some of us have had kids. We've certainly been children ourselves at one point. So I'm more concerned about, the new business and in operation, which is
Well, it's an understandable concern, and it's a well-founded question. We thank you. Anything else you want to tell us? Is Nina?
I'm still, I guess, yeah. Well, I'm just going to say, I hope you're going to give us ample amount of time. There's a number of us who've been waiting on the call, listening in intently for the next property that you guys are going to discuss, which is the Old Matawan Road property.
Well, let's talk about one at a time. And I did state right in the beginning that there would be a public portion on each and every application that we have. So there will be time. Okay.
Hello.
Is this another caller?
Yes, this is the property owners, the applicant.
Okay, you're talking about, you're calling in to ask us questions about the proposed ice cream parlor?
I'm the owner of the property. I'm the one that put the ice cream parlor there. I just want to say.
Hold on.
Mr. Klausner.
If you would like to talk, you can be sworn in by the board attorney, and you'll have to state your name and address, and then we'll listen to your concerns.
Mr. Klausner, do you want your client speaking during the public portion?
No, I don't think this is the appropriate time, Ms. Lee, for you to participate
I
here.
agree. Okay.
No wonder why I couldn't get her on the phone.
Okay. Can we move on to the
Okay.
next, Mr. Klauser?
Yeah, is there anyone else?
I don't know, is there?
Mr. Chairman, I don't see any more hands raised, but I think we should wait for 2 minutes to just, if somebody wants to call in.
Okay, very good.
Share my screen now again so that anybody who wants to call in can see. Mr. Sachs, nobody has raised their hands.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, if you want to entertain a motion to close the public portion, we could do that.
Yeah, I think at this point we can close the public portion. Mr. Klauser? I don't see-
Yes.
Oh, there we go. Public portion is closed. You have some final comments that you want to address the board with?
I do, but first, I wonder if we could unmute Miss Lee's phone.
I can.
Again, and I could just make sure that there's not something that she wants to add. I don't know if maybe there was just confusion or if she wanted to tap me on the shoulder and couldn't because I'm not there.
Vina, could we do that? It's now unmuted.
It's unmuted.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Miss Lee, we've concluded the presentation that you've heard. Is there anything that you wanted to add or not?
Not really. Actually, I was listening to one of the neighbor or the call talking about care about the kid hangout on their property.
Okay,
Well,
Klauser, she's going to have to be sworn.
Yeah, let me swear her in. Ms. Lee, I'm going to swear you in.
Sure.
You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
All right, please state your name and your position or affiliation with the applicant.
Sure. I'm the property owner of 2203 Wood 9 Old Bridge Turnpike. My name is Song Lee, SONG MING, Lee LEE.
Okay, thank you.
The owner of the property.
Thank you.
I'm the one that self-operation the business.
Okay.
I'm the one that run the business.
Why don't you let Mr. Klauser ask you what is it you want to tell us?
I heard the whole meeting. Everything fine, but I will talk to Mr. Klein afterward tomorrow. And I just want to let the one of the neighbor call. I forgot her name though. I'm sorry. And we're going to put a camera there. We're going to make sure secure the property and with the people no hangout on my property. That's what I could do, which is I do care the kids too. To be honest, with you, I have my own children. I don't let my kid hang out at the night, middle of the night when the property is not open. The people hang out there. So we're going to have a camera 24/7. That's what I probably do something. There's some kind of system connected with the police department. So that's the best I could. Yeah.
Well, that's a good thing.
Thank you very much.
That's what I do because I think that I used to be own some business with the restaurant bar. I know how the kid act, and I do care. To be honest, I do care, and I will put as much as a surveillance camera there, the back, the front, and enough lighting for that, and people not hiding behind the building. And maybe I should put some lighting when passing certain line, like a sensor that makes the noise, that type of alarm,
Yes, and you're a former business owner, are you not?
I'm the business owner, yes.
Yes, but I'm saying you were a business owner in other places.
Yes, I am. I was on the restaurant, a restaurant before, a while back 10 years ago.
Okay, well, I'm saying
Yeah.
you're aware of these situations, so you're doing the things that you think you need to do, such as a camera and alarm system, correct?
I have no problem. Even the business I have in my store, small store, I have 6 cameras, 1 outdoor camera, just a little frontage, 10 feet wide with frontage. I have cameras inside, outside, the back, everything. So,
Mr. Klausner, I think your client has successfully answered the previous caller's questions.
I think so.
that,
Thank you, Ms. Lee.
that's okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
There are no others, Vina?
No.
No. Okay, Mr. Klausner, you have some final comments?
I do. I just wanted to kind of summarize for the board. I think this is the type of application that I'm proud to bring to this board. We have a piece of property in Old Bridge that is without use, and it's in poor shape, and we're bringing a community business, a small business, to the area that's going to serve the community. I think the plans that the engineer has put together try to meet the intent of your ordinance on this small piece of property with regard to all of the dimensions as well as the landscaping. So I think this is a positive. You heard that from our planner for the town. It seems as both planners that are here this evening agree that this is the type of use that should be permitted in the zone and that we shouldn't even be asking for a use variance, but we are because it's not. So I would ask that the board look favorably on the application and grant the variance relief and the waivers that were requested and allow this business to come to town, allow Ms. Lee to invest her money in the property and make it that much better.
Thank you, Mr. Klausner. You know, I, for one, am happy to see that there is repurposing being done there. It's interesting that at that intersection, they've already repurposed repurposing the old bar, which is going to turn into a florist, and which came before the board. On the opposite corner, it turned into limousine service, which they've moved out, but they've certainly improved the property. And there's nothing like making the highway front a little nicer. So it seems like your planner has, at least to my satisfaction, proved both positive and negative criteria for allowing this. But we'll see how the board votes. Anybody else on the board would like, I'm going to go the same way. If you'd like to make one comment before we call for a vote. Mr. Scogno.
I still have concern about the exiting into ShopRite, because when you exit into ShopRite, that is a lane. You're going into a lane that has directional arrows showing you can only make a right. You can't make a left, and you can't go straight. You're going into a lane when you exit that area. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Ms. Kilduff. Ms. Kilduff, anything?
I'm good. No, I'm good.
Mr. Connor?
No comment.
Mr. Dewhurst?
I have just a question for Larry.
Yes.
You're asking Mr. Klausner to see if there's an agreement, not have an agreement. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I have a feeling there must be something that exists, and I'd like to review it. I guess if there's no agreement, then there can be access, but the question could be a liability issue. So it's an interesting point, John, but I have a feeling there has to be some type of an agreement between otherwise you would not have that access between the two lots.
Very good.
Peter, you're muted, so unmute yourself.
If I may, during these proceedings, I had feelers out to see if there was any information I can find, and I haven't read it and I don't know it perfectly, but it looks like there may be some sort of cross access that's buried in the legal description that's in the deed. So I think there is something. I'll explore it more and share it with Larry. It does make sense that there was, but I took the comment that no, there's nothing on my deed and just ran with it. But just because I thought that the access was such a good planning perspective, I didn't concern myself with it.
Well, the survey shows it as well. So there's definitely something that's recorded.
I think there is something in the deed.
Yeah.
So I think we're all okay.
Mr. Dewhurst, anything else?
I'll
go to Mr. Walker.
No comment.
Mr. Stoner. Nothing from Mr. Stoner?
No.
We'll go to Mr. Sikowski.
No comment.
Okay. I guess then we can gather this up. This is requiring a D1 use variance.
Unmute.
I'm sorry?
Oh, no, nothing. I was just trying to make sure everybody was unmuted.
Okay.
Yeah, and Mr.
Larry,
Sullivan, before you go further, just a couple comments, a couple conditions that I think the applicant had agreed upon. One of them is obviously Title 39 enforcement. The second one is providing for my review a copy of that cross-access agreement between the two sites. I think we left open the issue of how many outdoor seats they're going to have. And I think Ms. Sawant in her memo indicated, she thought 20 seats. Mr. Klausner, can we agree that 20 seats would be the maximum?
Yeah, that's the number, and that's what the testimony did to support the parking relief that we asked for.
All right, so let's cap that at 20, and obviously that triggers a variance since you can only have 8. But I think the 20 is what is contained in the report, and then it's obviously whatever waivers and variances have been testified to.
Larry, I had a question mark because the lighting was we didn't come to a firm agreement on that. How far the sidewalk's going and if Gary Lavallo has to get involved with the trees.
Well, Gary Lavallo is going to have to review it. I think the issue with the sidewalk is going to be dependent upon, dependent upon who's got jurisdiction over that area. Is it local or is it DOT? If it's local, then obviously I think their testimony is that they would agree to do it. And if it's DOT jurisdiction, then they would not. Am I correct with that, Mr. Klausner?
That's correct.
Okay. All right.
Mr.
And I think Nicole was okay with that.
I guess, Ms. Shapiro, is that okay? I don't see her on there. Okay, well, you're going to agree that if you'll agree to agree, correct, Mr. Klausner?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Sachs, then the board, we're going to take one vote on D1. If that does not pass, then the others will be unimportant.
Right.
Can we take all the bulks and then all the waivers as one?
Yeah, so we'll take a vote on the D1. We'll take a vote on the bulks and the design waivers together, and then preliminary and final.
Right, and everything that was said on the record as far as that Vina encompassed each and every one with the applicant, correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right, board members, this would require a use variance, a D1 use variance. I'll entertain a motion now for someone to move it.
I'll move it.
Is that for approval?
Yes.
Okay. Is there a second? There is a second? Ms. Kilduff?
Yep.
Okay. Roll call, please, Ms. Silverman.
Mr. Dewhurst,
My answer is yes.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Ms. Geldof,
Yes.
Mr. Scogno,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes for approval.
Mr. Sarkowski,
Yes.
Chairman Sullivan.
I believe they've met the burden of proof. Yes, for approval. And Larry, we have the Cs, the waivers, and then the preliminary and final, right? So
we can do the Cs and the waivers together. I'm okay with that.
It's okay, Mr. Klausner, okay with that too?
Oh, yes.
Okay, we're going to take all the bulk Cs and the waivers together as previously mentioned on the record. Someone want to move them?
Motion.
Who said that?
Ms.
Ms.
Kilduff?
Kilda.
Second, Connor.
Mr. Connor is second. Roll call, please.
Mr. Dewhurst,
Yes.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Ms. Geldof,
Yes.
Mr. Scogno,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Mr. Sarkowski,
Yes.
Chairman Sullivan.
Yes. How about we do major preliminary and final at once, Larry?
Let's do it separately. Do preliminary and then do final.
Okay, major site plan preliminary. I'll move it.
Second.
Who was the second?
Dewhurst.
Who moved it?
Mr. Sullivan, Mr. Dewhurst seconds.
Okay.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Dewhurst,
Yes.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Ms. Geldof,
Yes.
Mr. Scogno,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Mr. Psychowski,
Yes.
Chairman Sullivan,
Yes. Final major site plan. I'll move that as well.
I'll second Connor.
Second by Mr. Connor.
Mr. Dewhurst,
Yes.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Ms. Kilgore,
Yes.
Mr. Scogno,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Mr. Psychowski,
Yes.
Chairman Sullivan.
Yes.
Okay.
Your
That's it,
application is
right?
approved.
Mr.
Thank you.
Klausner,
It's-
thank you and all your professionals for your presentation this evening. Best of
And thank
luck
you.
for applicant
Thank you very
on
much.
business.
Thank you very much. I appreciate this format. I appreciate all the work that went into being able to make this presentation, and I thank the board for their indulgence.
As well for your expertise, sir. As well. Thank you. We're going to have the next applicant will be the final one for the night. The time is, I'm looking at my clock.
10 o'clock.
10 p.m. We do have to take a 5-minute recess for the stenographer and for the new witnesses. I would ask all of you at home, we are going to mute this temporarily so the stenographer can take a break, and we will come back in 5 minutes. I hope that with this time we can put the message up for the phone numbers to call in. Okay, Ms. Sawant?
Ready.
Yeah, okay. I'd ask everybody to just mute your microphones, please. 5-minute break.
By the way, Mr. Sullivan,
Ms. Silverman, are you back?
I'm back.
How about,
Everybody,
Debbie Masterson?
I'm here.
Okay, very good. Vina?
Vina, if you back, she'll be right back.
Okay, we'll wait. We'll just wait for her to come back.
Kim, can you hear me? This is Tommy Garrity.
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, I don't know if you caught me before, but I was present for that last presentation.
I saw your name up.
Yeah, okay, very good.
And I'm sure that Jim is going to have me do it again.
Okay.
We're missing the cookies, Kim.
I know. I feel really bad.
All right, is Vina back?
I'm here.
Okay. And it looks like we have, I don't see Larry.
I see him. Larry, unmute yourself.
Okay.
Daniel, you're muted. Ginger, you're muted. Leon, you're muted.
Okay, if everybody would unmute themselves so we can call the roll again. You look like everyone's back, Ms. Silverman.
I can't see anybody. I see a big exhibit.
I'll tell you what, why don't you take the roll anyway, please? I'll call the meeting back to order.
Okay, here we go. Mr. Dewhurst,
Here.
Mr. Connor,
Here.
Ms. Keldoff,
Here.
Mr. Scogno,
Here.
Mr. Walker,
Here.
Mrs. Heikowski,
Here.
Mr. Stoner,
Here.
Chairman Sullivan,
Here.
Mr. Sachs,
Here.
Mrs. Shapiro,
Here.
Ms. Sawant,
Here.
Mr. Hart. Tom's there.
No. I don't know where he went.
I see his name.
Oh, he
Okay.
is there. He's there.
Okay, Mr. Garrity,
Yep, I'm here.
Mr. Lavallo,
I'm here.
Ms. Drum,
Here.
and myself, Kim Silverman, Secretary.
Okay, this is a matter, this is the last application for the evening. This is matter 37-19Z, Vision Old Bridge 3 LLC. This is 105 Old Mattawan Road, located in the EDO 1 zone. This is a major site plan, preliminary and final C&D variance. Harbor Paper Firm representing Peter Klausner.
Hi, good evening again. For the record, Mr. Chair, members of the board, Peter Klausner with Housekeeping Paper on behalf of the application, on behalf of the applicant. I think that this is a complicated application. We have a lot of moving parts for this application. We have a number of witnesses. It is a late hour. It is and combined with the format that we were operating under. I spoke with the applicant in between. My goal this evening, I thought would have been productive if I was able to put on operations and get through engineering in your report. That's not going to happen. I think the application is better presented in a more cohesive manner. And I would ask if the board would consider taking jurisdiction of the application, allowing us to start fresh on the 21st. I think we would hopefully be first on that agenda. And then we can have a more together presentation and more time for the public to participate.
Mr. Sachs?
Yes. Well, first of all, we can accept jurisdiction of the application. All right, that's not a problem. Ms. Silverman, what else do we have on the 21st?
I have 2 Ds on.
Which one of them is the one we
One of
voted
them-
on? Yeah.
One,
the
one
that-
is a house and
Right.
the other one is a house that wants to be built. Actually, Peter is doing that one.
All right, so they're both D4 variances.
Mr. Sachs, they are both D4 variances.
Okay, all right. Mr. Klausner represents one of the applicants? The other
Yes,
applicant
one of
is
them.
pro se?
Yes, one is an LLC.
Okay, and the other one's pro se. All right, so I would not envision that those applicants will take a great deal of time. So, Mr. Klausner, if you'd like, we could carry it to the 21st. You wouldn't be first because I think we have an obligation to take the homeowner applications first. But I would imagine we could probably get started, with your application by 8:15, maybe 8:30. Right, Mr. Sullivan? I think that's probably feasible.
I would think so.
Yeah, all right.
That works, and I know that the one that I'm doing for on Cliffwood Way is very brief. It's super simple. It's just a rebuild after Sandy.
All right. I also would not envision that. I would also not envision that you're going to be you would complete your application on May 21st because you were planning on calling 2 witnesses tonight. You'll probably get to call 2 witnesses that night as well. So I'm not sure you'd even get to conclusion, but at least we could get it started.
Yeah.
All right.
I just don't think it makes sense to start and stop so quickly tonight. It doesn't make sense to me.
All right. All right. That's fine,
I'm sure
Mr.
it's
Chairman.
fine with all the board members.
I do have a question.
Yes.
So I do know that at least one member of the public expressed interest in speaking about a matter tonight. If this is postponed, will the public still have an option or an opportunity to speak?
Tonight?
Yes.
No, not tonight, because there would be no testimony. There would be no reason for any public portion since we have not even commenced the application at this point. So I'll make this general announcement to any member of the public who has been patiently waiting for this application this evening. We're dealing with a brand new format here. I don't think any of us anticipated that the first application was going to take 2 hours. I don't think that was on anyone's mind. I think, and I'll state it for the board, we apologize for the late hour here, but it's the applicant's prerogative if he doesn't want to start tonight, even though he has notice for this evening. So no, there will not be any public portion this evening. Certainly, when the application commences, which would be on May 21st, assuming you're okay with that, Ms. Silverman, then there certainly will be an opportunity for a public portion that evening. And if the application does not conclude on May 21st and is scheduled for another night, whenever that next scheduled meeting occurs, there'll be a public portion as well. But there would not be a public portion tonight because we haven't commenced the application. So, and that's strictly the applicant's prerogative.
Mr. Sachs, I just
Yes.
want to add something. Since this is a unique way we are conducting the meeting electronically, the notices include the member ID and password and phone numbers for residents to call. When there is when the application is carried over and there is a new meeting, there is a new member ID and a new password that is generated when we schedule these on Zoom. So I don't know how that impacts the public notices. That's a question for you attorneys, but I believe in that case, a notice stating the new member ID and password needs to be published, or the residents need to have that information to be able to call in. Everybody who's listening to me, you will not be able to use the member ID and password you use today to join in this meeting. There will be a new member ID and password. This morning, I spoke to Mr. Klausner because he's representing one of the applications that is being heard on May 21st. I have already provided him the member ID and password, but we need to figure out a way how the residents will be provided with the new information. We will definitely post this information on the township's website, but I don't know if there are any legal implications to.
Well, I don't think there's a legal requirement for him to renotice in the newspaper. All right. it's possible, and I'll have this discussion with Mr. Klauser. He, you know, I'm going to think about this, but I may request that he at least send out a new notice with the calling information by mail to these property owners. All right. But he doesn't have to renotice it in the newspaper. We can accept jurisdiction this evening, and we can carry this without further notice, at least for a public notice for the newspaper.
And as a township, we will ensure that the information is on the website soon.
Okay.
Probably by early next week, it will be on the township's website.
Okay. That's fine.
So we're going to be set for 21st, Mr. Klauser. That's okay?
Yes, that works.
And that works for you, Kim, right?
Yes, and Peter, I will send you a continuance form stating all this information that we just discussed.
Of course.
Okay, in brief, for those at home, if you don't understand what just happened, the applicant's attorney, because of the late hour, the meeting only goes till 10:30. So it would be it would be kind of interrupt the flow of the presentation by putting on any witnesses tonight, because it would barely get started and we would still have to open a public portion up. So the hour would just keep running too late. So on the 21st, this matter will be on the agenda again and heard, at which time, as Mr. Sachs, the board attorney, explained, there is always a public portion, as I explained, and there will be a public portion after that. And I've heard that people were worried about that, but unfortunately, we can't control the length of an application. This evening, it went a little bit longer than we probably would have been able to do in our normal setting of the courtroom. But this is all a little foreign to us, and we're trying to work our way through. We appreciate all the citizenry that are helping us to work our way through this. Having said that, once again, this matter is 3719Z, and this matter will be rescheduled for the 21st. There'll be no further notice, but I think Mr. Sachs has indicated that there may be some sort of a 200-foot notice for at least the webinar address and password. Is that correct, Mr. Sachs?
Yes, I'm thinking of going that way. Only, unfortunately, I have to tell you, we're dealing with uncharted territory with regard to municipal land use law and COVID-19. So we're doing things that we've never had to do before. But I will speak to Mr. Klauser. Probably I will call him after this meeting has concluded, and I will make sure that the public is protected and receives that additional information as to the participation code.
I'll tell you right now, I'm going to recommend to my client that we send out the 200-foot list letters with that new sign-in information. With the way that we're kind of working on a different system of notice, I think it's wise. I want the public that can hear me and is upset that I'm carrying it to know that there's a good reason for it. And in order to make sure that you have that information, this applicant is going to send you a new letter with the correct sign-in information so that you have ample opportunity to participate on the 21st.
Okay, well, I think, Mr. Chairman, there's your answer. So the public will receive a new notice as to, and which will provide all the call-in information and participation information.
And it won't be in the newspaper, right?
It doesn't have to be in the newspaper because we've accepted jurisdiction, all right? But then Mr. Klauser wouldn't be able to get it in the newspaper anyway.
No.
That wouldn't be feasible, so, all right.
Well, for all of you at home, we're sorry we couldn't get to you tonight. If you have interest in this matter, please tune in again, May 21st. The same exact way as you did tonight. And we wish you a good night. Any further matters to come before the board, Ms. Silverman?
No, we just everybody be safe.
Okay, Mr. Sachs, you have anything for the board before we?
No, I'm pleased with how everything went tonight, and
I am as well.
Took a little bit
Shapiro?
longer, but it worked very well.
Ms. Shapiro, anything for us?
No, I just want to thank Vina for facilitating the meeting on Zoom and for all her coordination efforts on making it. I think it was very successful.
I was going to save her for last, then you beat me
Oh.
to it. But thank you so much. You made it very easy on us, even though it was kind of difficult. So we thank all you did for the township and for this whole program for other jurisdictions. We're glad and proud to say that you're our planners. Thanks again.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, board, absent any other comments from the board, I'm going to ask someone to move for an adjournment.
Bruce, go ahead.
Bruce.
Bruce, go ahead.
Bruce.
Unmute, you gotta unmute yourself, Bruce. Okay.
Motion to adjourn.
There you go. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it.
Board stands adjourned.
All right, good night, everyone.
Everybody.
Good night.
Good night. Stay safe.
You
Yeah.
too.